Welcome to HFY Sci-Fi channel. Don't forget to subscribe and explore. Dust crawled across scorched ground, a low hiss as wind dragged it over cracked earth and splintered stone. Heat shimmered above a plain of wreckage, where forgotten machines lay gutted, their metal bones bleached and warped. A figure moved among the ruin, boots heavy, coat torn at the hem, face darkened by sun and time. Skin like dried leather, eyes narrowed against the glare, hands rough with old scars that no longer stung. Beyond the reach of his shelter, a shape swayed in the heat's waver. Thin legs buckled at the knees, ribs showing through pale, stretched skin. The child sagged against her side, too light, too silent. Hair matted with dust, lips cracked, eyes wide but seeing nothing that could bring comfort. The wind bit harder, lifting ash from the bones of dead structures, stinging exposed flesh, carrying with it the taste of rust and forgotten blood. Each step closer brought clearer the tremor of limbs no longer strong enough to bear their own weight. No words yet, only the rise and fall of breath ragged and near gone. Her mouth opened, dry as the ground underfoot, voice breaking as the plea left it, soft at first, raw as it formed in air parched and thin. Take life if it would spare the boy. Words stripped of pride, of hope, left naked in the burning light. Knees struck dirt, palms flattened against ground that burned to touch. Fingers dug into brittle soil as if seeking mercy where none lived. No reply from the man at first. Shadow fell across her form, long and sharp against the dying light. A hand hovered over the grip of a weapon, fingers twitching once, then still. Breath held, shoulders drawn tight, heart beating hard beneath layers of worn cloth. She did not lift her head. Eyes lowered, hair hanging like a curtain between face and fate. Beside her, the child stirred weakly, a sound between whimper and sigh. Bones too light beneath skin that hung loose, hunger carved deep, no longer a wound but an emptiness that swallowed all else. Air thick with heat pressed down, no relief in the horizon's blur. Silence stretched, broken only by the soft shift of dust under boots, by the faint creak of leather dried near to cracking. Fingers slackened from the weapon's grip, fell to the side, empty. A slow step forward. The coat's edge brushed her shoulder, rough fabric against fevered skin. Another step, weight shifting, boots grinding stone to powder beneath heel. A hand reached past, not for her throat, not for the hilt at the belt, but to the pack strapped tight across his back. Water skin uncapped, the scent of it more than she could bear. Lips parted, breath caught. Water poured slow, measured, into the hollow of her palm. Fingers closed around it though most spilled through, wasted on ground that drank it faster than thirst ever could. The boy's mouth touched skin damp for the first time in days, maybe longer. A shudder ran through the small frame as life stirred where only fading had remained. Eyes closed, head bent low, she spoke no thanks, dared not. Fear of breaking the moment, fear of it ending as quickly as it began. Boots turned, steps retreating slow, deliberate in their weight. No promise given, no safety offered. The outpost's shadow loomed, its walls broken but still standing against what passed for night on this world. Wind rose again, cutting sharper as heat bled from the sky, carrying with it the faint cry of metal long abandoned. The gate stood open, rusted hinges unmoving, as silence reclaimed the land. Behind him, mother and son crouched close to earth that held no kindness, bound by need, by the thin thread of mercy spared. Ahead, shelter waited, but no peace lay within. The air tasted of ash and old war, and somewhere beyond sight, the hunt had already begun. Hands clenched at his sides, nails digging into callous skin as wind carved grit across his face. Eyes locked on the shapes before him, weighing hunger against survival, mercy against ruin. The pack's weight dragged at one shoulder, supplies counted, recounted, measured to last, to stretch over days of dust and heat. Every drop, every scrap, a promise made to himself to endure where so many had failed. The boy's breath hitched, dry air catching in a throat too raw for sound. Lips trembled against parched skin, the taste of water lingering but fading too soon. thin arms wrapped tight around a hollow belly, as if hands could still hunger's gnaw. The woman's head remained bowed, silent beneath the sky's glare, hair streaked with ash and grit, body swaying with weakness that mocked her will. A step forward sent loose stone tumbling, a sound too loud in the emptiness. Fingers hovered over the latch of the pack, pausing as if by opening it he might unleash more than what it held. Memories clawed at the edges of thought. Nights spent counting rations by starlight, mornings scraping frost from cracked glass, days hunting what no longer roamed. Mercy cost dearly. It always had. The pack fell to the ground with a thud that seemed to shake the air. Knees bent slow, joints stiff from toil and wear. Leather creaked as he dug through what remained, each item a reminder of what would be lost. A wrapped portion of dried meat, smaller than memory served. 2 roots dug from dead ground, their bitter taste the only proof of soil's grudging gift. A single strip of cloth, meant for binding wounds, now folded beneath cracked bread. One piece, not both. Fingers closed around the meat, lifted it from the pack's hollow. The smell rose sharp, salt and smoke and survival's cost. Eyes shifted to the child, hollow gaze lifted at the scent, hunger stronger than fear. The meat lay in dirt-streaked hands, offered without word, without promise. Water skin uncapped again, slower this time. A measure poured into a battered tin, set down within reach, not forced upon them. Every drop spent tasted in the back of his throat before it left the skin. Every crumb given counted in a ledger that had no ink but the weight of consequence. Wind shifted, carrying scents from beyond sight. Smoke not his own. Oil burned where no fire should be. The gift had been made, the choice carved in action. Eyes lifted to the horizon's blur, where shapes might form, where riders might come. The line had been crossed, the price already rising. Silence closed around the moment, broken only by the soft sound of a child chewing slow, as if to make what was given last longer than it could. The woman's fingers trembled as they lifted the tin, water staining cracked lips, breath catching at the shock of it. No thanks spoken. None needed. The weight of what had passed between them filled the space more than words ever could. Boots ground dust beneath them as he rose, pack lifted again, lighter than before, heavier in what it meant. Shelter waited beyond the gate's shadow, but no safety came with it. Each step toward it marked by what had been given, what could not be reclaimed. The world watched, unseen, unfeeling, as mercy claimed its price in silence. Smoke rose in thin streams from camps scattered beyond broken ridges, where men traded coin for silence and violence in equal measure. Word traveled faster than footsteps across the dead ground. No need for messages written or spoken. The dust carried news in the way it shifted beneath new tracks, in the way watchfires burned longer into night. Kindness marked a man as surely as a brand burned into skin. Mercy drew hunters as blood drew flies. The price set upon the woman's head weighed in metals stripped from dying mines, in fuel promised for engines too rusted to trust. Her crime needed no telling. She had defied the order given by those who carved this colony into shares and spoils. No place existed for those who begged instead of obeyed. Riders gathered where scrub clung to rock, where dry riverbeds offered cover for machines that hissed and stank of old fuel. Faces hidden beneath goggles scratched by sand, mouths wrapped in cloth dark with sweat and dust. Guns slung low, blades strapped to thighs, eyes sharp with hunger for what had been promised. The trail left no secret. Small footprints marked where the boy had stumbled, where a mother's arms had lifted him clear of danger for a breath too short. Boot prints deep where weight bore down hard, where a man burdened by choice had walked without turning back. Each night brought the glow of fires too close, too many. Each morning broke upon a horizon smudged by the haze of moving engines. In the quiet between, the sound of pursuit crept through stone and scrub. A cough where none should be. The soft clink of metal against metal as weapons were readied. Water ran low. The last strip of meat split into bites too small to satisfy. Thirst dried words before they formed, left only looks shared across empty space. heavy with what could not be spoken. The outpost offered no shelter. Walls marked by bullet scars, roof sagging beneath the weight of years, door hanging loose on rusted hinge. Within, shadows clung to corners where light refused to reach. Every sound beyond its broken threshold brought breath held tight, heart hammering against ribs like a prisoner against his cell. Outside, dust rose where riders passed, engines rumbling low, too near. Faces turned toward the ruin, eyes sharp beneath the weight of bounty and blood debt. No sign given, no movement made to betray the living from the dead. Silence kept as shield, broken only by the slow grind of teeth against the hunger that would not leave. Night brought cold that bit deeper than steel. Breath steamed in air that smelled of oil and ash. A single shot cracked distant silence, a mark laid upon the land that no place lay beyond reach. The choice made had shaped the path. No turning aside. No hope that the world might forget. The hunters came because they must. Because the price named mercy as crime. Because kindness could not go unpunished where law had long since rotted. Ash clung to boots with every step, fine as powder, gray as bone, rising in small clouds that marked their passing for eyes that searched from ridge and ruin. Ground cracked beneath weight, brittle under the sun's burn, crumbling at the edges of deep scars left by machines long stripped of use. Air tasted of rust, of spent fuel, of promises broken before any of them had drawn breath. A ruined town stretched ahead, buildings hollowed by time and greed, walls scorched black where fire had licked high before dying with nothing left to feed on. Window frames gaped like open mouths, glass long shattered, splinters ground into the dust. Every corner watched. Every shadow weighed. Footfalls slowed where cover seemed thin. Gaze swept the empty street, lingered on sagging roofs, doorways dark as open graves. Each choice measured, each pause a risk. Hands roughened by labor clenched at the strap of the pack, mind tugged in two by the need to move and the fear of where movement led. Behind, the soft scuff of small feet dragging through ash. Breath ragged, too light, the boy's strength failing faster with every mile. No cry given, no complaint offered. Just the sound of lungs fighting air that gave no comfort, of a body carried by will alone. The woman's steps uneven, slowed by weight not her own, arms aching from holding him close, heart heavier still. The settler's eyes lifted to where the land rose sharp, jagged rock cutting the horizon. Beyond lay nothing he trusted, but nothing behind offered less danger. His choices narrowed to a single path marked by dust and regret. Ash shifted as the wind picked up, carrying with it the low thrum of engines far off, closer with every breath. No need to look back to know pursuit gained ground. No need to wonder how many or how close. The sound spoke clear enough. Each building passed offered shelter in shape alone. Inside, rot and ruin. Stairs fallen through, floors cracked open to empty cellars. A promise of cover that would collapse beneath them when most needed. Still, eyes marked each as a place to die slower if caught. Mouth dry as the ash underfoot, tongue heavy with the taste of old smoke. Every muscle burned with the weight of what had been given, what could not be taken back. Mercy had led here. Mercy would not save them from what hunted close. The boy's head rested against his mother's shoulder, too weak to lift, too tired to see. Her steps faltered beneath the strain, stumbled where ground gave way, caught herself with a cry swallowed before it reached the air. The settler turned, hands reaching out, caught them both before dust claimed them, voice lost in the rush of his own breath. Ahead, the plain stretched empty beyond the last ruin's edge. No cover. No promise. Only the choice to run or stand. Ash rose in small swirls at each step forward, marking their path as clear as blood on stone. The sound of pursuit louder, engines hungry, voices shouting over their growl. Decision carved in silence, no turning back, no waiting for fate to choose. Boots struck the cracked earth harder as the flight began, ash billowing behind like smoke from a fire that would not be quenched. Steel walls loomed against a sky bruised by dust, their surface pitted where storms had scoured paint to bare metal. The station crouched at the edge of a dried riverbed, forgotten by those who had once drained its wealth, left to rot when no profit remained. Doors hung askew on broken hinges, gaps wide enough for the wind to shriek through. Boots crunched over shattered glass, and rusted bolts scattered like bones on the floor. Air inside stale as old graves, thick with the stench of oil long spilled and left to stain. No comfort waited in the shadows, only the thin promise of shelter from eyes that hunted and engines that growled through the dark. Hands cleared debris from a corner where roof met wall, where no window opened to betray them. The boy lowered to the ground with a shiver that shook limbs too light to warm themselves. Eyes half-lidded, breath shallow, hunger and fear carved deep into skin stretched too tight. His mother crouched close, arms wrapped around him, as if flesh alone could shield him from what the world gave. The settler dropped beside them, back to cold steel, eyes fixed on the gap where door met frame. Every creak of metal, every sigh of wind brought muscles tense, heart pounding with the memory of pursuit. Fingers worked at the pack's ties, drew out what remained. A strip of meat, a cracked tin cup, the last of the water. The boy's hand trembled as it reached for what was offered. No words passed between them. The act enough, the weight of it heavier than any speech. Thin lips closed around dry meat, chewed slow, eyes lifting once to meet the gaze of the man who had chosen to stand between him and what waited outside. A tool belt dropped to the floor with a clatter that rang too loud in the hollow space. From it, a battered knife drawn, blade dulled by use but sharp enough still. Fingers guided the boy's smaller hands, closed them around the grip, showed him how to hold, how to move without cutting what should not be cut. A stone taken from the floor, edge smooth, held tight to scrape against metal. Sparks danced in the gloom, brief flashes that lit the boy's face, wide-eyed, intent. Ash drifted in through the broken window, caught in air that swirled between wall and roof. The man's voice low, words few, each one shaped to teach, not to soothe. The boy's grip grew surer, the motion less clumsy. A bond formed not in speech but in action, forged with every scrape of stone on steel, with every lesson carved in silence. Outside, the night thickened. The station groaned beneath its weight, metal cooling in the dark, joints settling with sounds like bones cracking under strain. Engines no longer heard, but the memory of their pursuit pressed close, closer than the walls that barely held the cold at bay. The boy's head lowered at last, lashes dark against hollow cheeks, sleep claimed where fear had left no space before. The man watched the door until dawn's light bled thin across the floor, hand never far from the knife he had given to teach survival, not to promise safety. The bond born in ash and hunger held them through that night, fragile as the shelter that shielded them, strong as the choice that had brought them there. Black Hollow sprawled at the edge of the wasteland, its bones sunk deep into rock carved by storms no longer remembered. Shacks leaned into each other as if to share what strength remained. Smoke stained the air, bitter with oil and burnt refuse, clinging to skin, seeping into breath. Few came here seeking shelter without paying a price. Fewer left untouched by what dwelled in its shadows. A figure emerged from the gloom, gait familiar, face lined by years hard-lived. The settler's name passed his lips soft, as if afraid the wind might carry it where it should not go. Hands rough with work reached out in greeting, words of refuge offered with a voice cracked by drink and dust. No charge named, no debt spoken. A place to rest promised beneath a roof that sagged under its own weight. Eyes searched that face for signs of truth, found only the wear of a life spent chasing scraps in a world that had none to give. Hunger and fear dulled the senses that might have turned aside. Weariness pressed heavier than caution. Steps followed where welcome was offered, boots crossing a threshold into shadow that stank of betrayal long before it spoke its name. Inside, walls close enough to smother, air thick enough to choke. A single lamp burned low, its flame casting shapes on surfaces pocked by rot and rust. Water poured into tin cups, meat laid out on cracked plate. The boy's eyes wide at the sight, hands trembling as they reached for what hunger demanded. The settler watched, heart caught between gratitude and dread, the weight of the choice growing heavier with each breath drawn beneath that roof. Night deepened. Outside, voices rose low at first, the mutter of men drawn by promise of coin. Footsteps gathered where none should be. The creak of boots on worn boards, the soft clatter of weapons checked in hands eager for use. The man who had given shelter slipped out, words of business muttered as he went, leaving behind the stench of his treachery thick in the air. The boy froze, cup halfway to lips. The mother drew him close, body tense, eyes on the door where danger pressed close. A hand reached for the knife given in a lesson meant for survival, not for this. Another hand pulled open the pack, fingers closing on what little remained, heart breaking as it counted too few supplies, too few chances. A knock, too soft for courtesy, too sharp for peace. No time left. A glance shared, a choice made without words. The back window shattered under a boot, the gap barely wide enough to pass. Glass tore cloth and skin alike as they forced their way through, breath loud in ears, hearts louder still. The alley offered no cover, only the black of night and the hope that speed could outpace greed. Shouts rose behind, boots thundering in pursuit, shots cracking the air, sparking off stone. The pack tore open on a jagged beam, its contents spilled and lost to the dirt. No time to gather what fell. No time to mourn what could not be reclaimed. Ash rose as feet pounded the ground, blood marked where glass had cut deep. The boy stumbled, lifted by arms that shook with effort, carried forward through the dark as betrayal roared behind them, hungrier than hunger, colder than the night. The hollow's edge came at last, the land falling away into the waste beyond, where no shelter waited, where only the hunted ran. The choice to trust had cost what little they held. The price of mercy paid again, in blood and loss and flight into the unknown. Ash stained the sky where dawn tried and failed to break clean. Tracks cut deep into soil marked where the hunted had passed, where blood had fallen and dried, where mercy's cost had been paid again and again. From the edges of broken settlements, from caves where no light reached, from gullies where only the desperate dared hide, eyes watched what unfolded across the land. The settlers' defiance traveled farther than any rider. Word carried on voices too soft to name aloud, passed in whispers between hands that had long since given up the right to hope. A man who owed nothing to the hunted had stood against those who owned everything. A man with nothing left to lose but what little his hands could hold had given more than coin or weapon. Small groups gathered where rock broke the wind's bite, where sightlines reached far but cover still held. Faces marked by hunger, by the lash of masters long gone or not gone far enough. They saw the fires set by mercenaries on ground once called their own. They saw bodies left as warnings. They saw, too, where the man had stood, where he had fought, where he had run, not for himself but for others. Hands that once knew only labor's chain closed around stones, around pipes torn from ruined structures, around rusted tools that served as weapons because nothing else remained. Feet moved where once they had been still. Fires burned not as signal but as promise, flames rising from wagons left to rot, from barricades hastily built and held by courage alone. Shots rang out where no one expected resistance. Mercenaries cursed the dark, fired blind into night where shapes darted between cover. A knife found its mark where gunmen had thought themselves safe. A trap set in haste tore through the wheel of an armored bike, sent rider and machine tumbling into the dust. The settler's face became more than memory. It became a reason. A man with no stake had taken a stand. That truth burned hotter than any fire, spread faster than any bullet. The hunted became hunters in turn, not for coin, not for land, but for the right to draw breath free of the boots that sought to grind them down. Ash rose thicker where rebellion took root, carried on wind that tasted of iron and smoke. The ground shook beneath feet that no longer fled but fought. Where one had stood, many followed, and where many gathered, the world changed, if only for a heartbeat. Each act of defiance fed the next. Each blow struck spoke of a future not yet claimed but no longer beyond reach. The land bore witness as silence broke, as fear cracked and fell away, as seeds of rebellion took hold in soil rich with blood and sorrow. Iron walls of rock rose jagged on either side, narrowing the world to a strip of cracked ground no wider than a cart's breadth. Sky above burned low and red, the light sharp enough to cut. Wind pushed through the pass, carrying dust and the stench of sweat and fuel where the hunters closed in. Boots planted firm, hands rough with labor gripped what weapons could be found, tools turned to purpose not their own. Eyes searched stone for advantage, for crevice or ledge where a stand might hold. Breath drew shallow, each one tasting of metal, of ash, of the end that pressed close. The pass offered no escape, only the choice to fall fighting or to fall running. Shapes gathered behind, small in number but fierce with what the hunted become when no road lies open. The boy stood near, slight frame shaking but eyes clear, lips drawn tight. Fingers clenched a rusted length of pipe, knuckles white, jaw set. The man's hand fell to his shoulder, no word given, the weight of that touch enough. The woman moved among the frightened, voice low, steady as stone. No promise of safety, no lie of hope, only strength lent by presence, by gaze that did not flinch. Those who had wavered found will. Those who had faltered found purpose. Small hands gripped what weapons could be raised. Backs straightened where fear had bent them low. The sound of engines grew loud, filled the narrow space with thunder. Riders appeared at the mouth of the pass, shapes blurred by dust, eyes hidden behind cracked visors, mouths tight with hunger for the prize they chased. Guns raised, blades drawn, the promise of death carried in every line. Stone rained down from heights above as a hand loosed the first strike. Dust rose thick as bodies moved, as metal met flesh, as cries broke from lips that had held silence too long. The boy swung with all the strength his small frame could give, blow struck true against knee unguarded, sent a man sprawling into the dirt. The woman lifted a fallen staff, brought it down where threat pressed close, drove back what sought to harm. The pass rang with the clash of desperate hands against those who came for coin and blood. No step given, no ground surrendered. Ash mixed with blood where it fell, the earth marked by choice made and held. Each breath drawn ragged, each heartbeat loud in ears deafened by battle's roar. The man fought as one who knew no rescue would come, as one who understood the cost of failure too well. His strength fed those beside him, his stand gave shape to theirs. When at last the ground lay still, when the hunters broke and fled or fell where they stood, the pass held no triumph, only the quiet of the living counted, the fallen mourned by the weight of what had been done. Dust settled over all, a shroud for the price paid to stand free, if only for a moment more. The bond between them forged in that place, stronger than fear, marked by courage shone when all seemed lost. Ash filled the air where the ground fell away into gullies cut deep by forgotten floods. The land offered no promise, only distance, only the thin hope that space might shield what walls no longer could. Each step forward pressed harder against muscle worn near breaking, lungs raw with dust drawn too deep. Behind, the sound of pursuit grew louder, engines pushed to their limit, voices raised not in rage but in hunger for what had fled their grasp. The man slowed, boots dragging against stone, heart pulled in two between the need to run and the weight of what must be done. Eyes swept the land ahead, marked where the child stumbled, lifted by hands that trembled from more than exhaustion. The mother's gaze turned once, met his, no words passed, none needed. The choice shaped itself in that single look. A hand lifted, palm raised, not in farewell but command. The others moved on, feet unsure, hearts unwilling, but the will stronger than the fear. Shapes grew smaller against the haze, swallowed by the land's broken skin, leaving him alone where the ground rose sharp behind him. Stone underfoot, cold despite the sun's burn, offered place to stand. Breath drawn slow, chest tight with the knowing of what came next. Hands found the weight of the last blade, grip worn smooth by use, edge nicked by too many strikes, too many near defeat. Fingers closed around it as if by holding fast he might hold back what followed. Dust rose where riders crested the ridge, engines roaring like beasts unleashed, metal gleaming where sunlight caught on gun and blade alike. No pause given, no mercy offered. The man stood where the land narrowed, where few could pass at once, where numbers meant less than courage. First shot fired wild, stone shattered near his feet, shards biting skin. He moved forward, not back, steps sure, shoulders set. Steel met steel, spark against dust, cries of rage met with silence that spoke louder. Every strike slowed what came behind, every blow cost him blood, breath, strength. The ground ran red where boots slipped on stones slick with what was given to buy time. The line held not by walls, not by weapons, but by will carved deep, by the price paid for the chance that those he shielded might reach what lay beyond the waist. Shapes blurred at the edges of sight, arms heavy as if bound, breath ragged as if fire filled his chest. Still he fought, still he stood, until the land itself seemed to rise and shield those who had passed beyond his reach. The noise of battle faded, drowned beneath the beat of his own heart, beneath the roar of the wind that carried the sound of their escape far ahead of the hunters who would claim no prize this day. Where he fell, the ground bore witness, marked by the price of more, the cost of mercy given without promise of return. The land held his stand in silence, as the hunted ran free into the broken light beyond. Morning light broke thin across ground torn by war and time, its warmth weak against the chill left by night's grip. Smoke coiled from ruined towers where once the lords of coin had watched over all they claimed. Ash drifted in lazy falls from skies scarred by fire, settling on faces raised not in fear but in resolve. The boy who had once clung to his mother's side stood taller now, frame lean from hardship, eyes dark with the memory of what had been lost and what had been won. Where once small hands had trembled on the grip of a pipe too heavy to wield, now fingers closed sure around the haft of a weapon carved from scrap and steel, blade marked by battle and the price paid for every step toward freedom. At his back gathered those who had learned courage in dust and ruin, who had seen what a single man's mercy could become. No banners rose above them, no song marked their march. Only the sound of boots on stone, of breath drawn as one, of hearts set to purpose sharper than any edge. Walls that had loomed high over the colony's broken streets now crumbled beneath the weight of rebellion's hand. Gates once barred to the hunted now lay twisted in the dirt, ground red where blood had paid toll for passage. Engines silent where once they roared, guns quiet where once they ruled. Each order given spoke of the one who had stood when flight would have saved him. Each plan shaped in the memory of sacrifice made without promise of reward. The boy's voice carried where needed, low and certain, words few but enough. Where he led, others followed, not for coin, not for land, but for the chance to shape a world their own. Dust rose with their passing, marked the path where the old order fell, where the new took root. No hand reached for crown or throne. No claim staked but that of survival earned, of life wrested from the jaws of those who had thought themselves above cost or consequence. The land bore witness to change carved deep, to the truth that what begins with mercy can end with freedom. No monument raised to mark the settler's stand, no stone etched with name or date. The legacy walked in the steps of the boy who became more, in the hands of those who no longer bowed, in the dawn that broke clean over a world remade. The colony stood, scarred but unbroken, its fate forever shaped by the choice of one who had given all without asking what it might bring.